Very excited about this one. My guest on this episode of the AVB podcast is, I can't wait for you to tell your story, but what I know about you is a pretty incredible story. Earlier, John Powers was on. Kim Kelly is our guest, is what I should have said instead of fumbling over my words. John Powers was in here earlier and spoke very highly of you. Yeah. So I guess, Kim, maybe we'll start with you the same way we start with everybody else, kind of from the beginning. Okay. Born and raised here in Windsor or elsewhere?
River Canard.
Why did we talk about this?
Yeah.
Okay, we did. All right, because I've had this weird sort of like through this podcast. There's probably been about 6 or 7 people that have come through the podcast in one variation or another who've had some connection to River Canard, myself included,
yeah.
as we talked about. It's a weird connection. So where in River Canard?
On Snake Lane.
Oh, that's right. We did.
Which is now Canard Drive.
Yeah.
And the real estate values have reflected the name change.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It was funny growing up with a name like Kelly in River Canard because it's primarily French. Mm-hmm. And I'm half French. My however many great-grandfathers was a guy named Georges Drouillard,
okay,
who was a guide on the Lewis and Clark expedition. And there's a book about him, actually. It's called The Hand Talker.
Okay.
And the gift that he was an amazing tracker and hunter, and but he had the ability to communicate with all the native tribes with his hands.
Okay.
And hence the Hand Talk.
Is it like a local book or is it like a national print book?
Oh, yeah, national print.
Okay. Well, and I mean, I'm just wondering because, like, you know, Biblioasis does a lot of like local kind of relative books, but this is a national print book called The Hand Talker.
Yeah.
I'm definitely, let's write that down so we make sure that we tag that, please. So growing up in River Canard.
With an English name.
Right.
I actually experienced discrimination because I didn't talk French.
Right.
And they didn't care about my grandfather. And I learned to fight at a very early age.
Really, like it was like that bad?
Yeah.
Really? Because I knew the area. Because, like I said, I think when we talked before, I told you I grew up in River Canard as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, while I was growing up there, it took me years into my childhood to understand that there was any sort of French connection to the area whatsoever. Yeah. Other than the fact that the school you went to like had some French in it.
Yeah.
But it was that bad back then?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
My grandfather, or the Drouillard side of my family, owned a lot of acreage, all the way from Disputed Road to Snake Lane, over to the Anderton Town Line.
All that farm area.
Yeah, and when my mom and dad got married, my grandfather gave them a lot. And when all my grandfather's children got married, they were all given a lot.
Okay.
And they had to build their own house. Here's a lot, you're on your own.
Right.
And my parents got one right on the river. So it was a wonderful place to grow up. Yeah. We'd go out back and skate all the way to the church in the winter. Right. In the summer, we had rowboats and Viking wars and lots of snakes and scary stuff.
Yeah.
And it was just a wonderful place to grow up.
So what was your big influence kind of coming up through that area?
Survival.
Really?
Oh yeah. You had to be strong. You know, you had like French kids would just walk up to you and go, "How do you like a pound in the moat?" And I'd go, "What's a moat?" and I got the strap the very first day I ever went to school in grade 1.
Really?
Well, it was called Dufour School. It was on Snake Lane.
Okay.
It was a little red schoolhouse with a belfry. and the rope and the whole deal. 8 grades in one room.
Right.
So first day of school, I had to walk home. There was no school buses or ox carts or anything like that back then.
Right.
Anyway, some kid picked up a rock, threw it at me, and got me right between the shoulder blades. Except I was born on the river. I could really toss rocks. I mean, I was... Anyway, I returned fire and caught him just above the eye and split above his eyelid open, so there was blood and drama. And they actually sent 2 grade 8 goons chasing me down the road to drag me back to school. That was my introduction to academia.
That was your first day?
Yeah. So, anyway, then I was supposed to skip grade 2. But my parents moved me to the Catholic school. So, because I didn't take catechism for a year, they wouldn't honor the skip.
Okay.
And I think I carried resentment about that in here today.
That's hilarious.
By the time I got to grade 10, I went to high school in Amherstburg. Mm-hmm. I was bootlegging to 5 high schools. And I got one of my boys sold to a guy that I never liked the looks of him. I didn't trust him. And I said, don't sell to him. And he went ahead and did it. And of course, we got busted.
Fucking cop.
Yeah. So I spent the night in the Leamington jail, which was my first time being incarcerated. And of course, my initial reaction was, I got to break out of here.
How long were you in for?
Overnight. No matter what the courts would do to me, I was more scared of what my old man had done. And I got home. So anyway, I'm planning my escape, and I look under the sink in the cell, and I see a piece of pipe, and I go, well, if I pry this loose, I can hack away at the bars and be out of here. At this point, I hadn't given him my name. Anyway, I pulled the pipe, and all of a sudden, it was a tsunami. And I'm and the cops are around the corner, sitting at a table and talking and everything. I can hear them. So I watched the water flowing, and all of a sudden, Jesus Christ, what's that going? I went, the pipe burst. And I went, get in the other cell, you little bastard. Anyway, so this caused a huge deal at the high school. So the principal said, you may never be able to continue your education because of this. But if you admit it, you can go ahead. You'll be suspended, but you'll be able to get back in and continue your education. And so anyway, I agreed. Of course, my fingers were crossed. And the big deal was he wanted me to expose the guys who were buying the booze for me.
Oh, okay.
And anyway, they filled the auditorium. They had the whole podium and all the knucklehead school board guys sitting there. And anyway, so the big moment came, and the principal's sitting there with a cocky grin. Am I ever going to look good? So I get up to the mic. Oh yeah, they had a PA there and everything. And they said, now you're going to disclose who provided you with this alcohol? And I got up and said, well, I'm here to admit I sold this clown the alcohol. I suspected he was a snitch, and now I know he is. And I'm here to account for what I did, and I'm not giving up anybody's name or anything else. And he just went psycho. Now, if you were within eyesight of the school, you couldn't smoke. So after I said that, and he was freaking, you agreed to tell, and I'm going, yeah. So I lit up a smoke, and I walked right down the center aisle and walked out the door. And one of the school board guys came out and said, well, you'll probably never be able to go to school again, but at least you went out like a man.
Holy shit, Kim. So what did you do from there then? You mean your bootlegging career's now gone to shit?
Yeah, so it's down to hard labor now.
Right.
Landscaping for a neighbor's company.
Yeah.
I sold menswear at Caner's.
Okay.
If you remember that. And I was in the military.
Fuck. Okay, wait a second. I hear these stories all the time. You know, I had the rough childhood and then I end up in the military. You tell me exactly how a kid who has been fighting his whole fucking life decides to be the bootlegger in high school, and then you end up in the military?
Yeah.
What, by like order of a judge?
Well, no, there was a drinking underage charge involved, but I flashed my badge, my military ID, and I was about a month away from leaving to Cornwallis, Nova Scotia,
Okay.
to do basic training. And we were the first company to successfully steal an entire keg of draft beer out of the officers' mess. We drank it, cleaned the mess up, left no evidence, and put the empty keg back where we took it. And the military thing, I signed up for, I was in the Air Force. So I signed up for back then they called it the Air Element. That's when all the services amalgamated. And I signed up for you know what I mean, meteorologist technician.
Right.
And so at the time I thought, oh, great. If Canada has a space program, I'll be able to partake in that. And this is cutting edge stuff.
Right.
Well, I finished my basic training and ended up being transferred to Trenton to the School of Meteorology. So I learned very quickly that meteorology back then consisted of duplicating weather charts that came in by teletype
Right.
on an Oslid machine.
Okay.
And the Oslid fumes were the only thing that got me through it. but it didn't cure the boredom.
Right.
So I went in and said, okay, I'm not what I signed up for. I want to go air crew.
Right.
Well, I had to do another set of medicals, and my blood pressure was too high.
Okay.
So they gave me the choice of getting out or staying on ground crew. And I didn't like saluting. I didn't like any of that stuff.
Right.
So I said, see ya.
Nice.
And on it went. So I was selling menswear, and I got recruited by Dialects Diversified when they opened Devonshire Mall.
Okay.
I was there to prepare for the opening. And of course,
What does that mean, prepare for the opening? Like you were...
the opening of the mall.
But like, what was your job in that?
Oh, I was working in Big Steel,
Oh, okay.
which was owned by Dialects, who owned Fairweather, Leading Lady, a bunch of things.
Okay.
And basically, I was going to finish getting that store open and established, and then move to Toronto.
Okay.
And there was a big career, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I did that, and I hated it.
Did you? How long did you do that for?
Probably 5 years.
Okay.
You know, and I got promotions and stuff, and it was all good. But I went and got a real estate license.
Right.
So I started selling real estate. Never sold. The only house I ever sold in my real estate career was to a guy named Morris Hoffman who owned a high-end furniture store called the Art Shop.
Okay.
And one day we pulled into the Art Shop parking lot, and somebody had taken his spot, and the whole parking lot was full. So he goes, buy that house, buy that house, buy that house, and pay whatever you have to over the market. Back then, $5,000, which was a lot of money.
Right.
So that's the only house I ever sold because I never had the patience to. I don't like the way the cupboard doors open. And I'd be going, I don't like the way your mouth opens. but anyway, so I did that, and pretty successfully. Like, I think I was 23 or 24, and I sold 1,500 lots to Viceroy Homes at Sir Sam's Inn in Halliburton.
Right.
I sold a hotel in Barbados that I never laid eyes on. And on and on. So,
What was like? Did you enjoy? Because you were telling me about your real estate stuff before when you and I first spoke. Did you enjoy that stuff, or did you just do it because it was decent money?
I enjoyed it.
Did you?
I worked with characters.
Yeah.
And I mean, I have some amazing real estate stories.
Give us one.
Well, for example, I mentioned Sir Sam's Inn. It's in Halliburton, and the guy who owned it was Bob Bishop, who was a relative of our famous pilot, Billy Bishop, I think. He was a World War I flying ace.
Right.
Anyway, he was a distinct, or a great-grandson or great-great-grandson or whatever. So to show the property, well, to show 1,500 acres, you have to do it by air. So he had a seaplane, or not a seaplane, it was a regular plane. Well, it had, I think, pontoons and wheels. So he would pick us up at Buttonville Airport with my clients and would fly up there and would fly over the property, and we had the surveys and the aerial photographs on the plane. But when we landed, it was a sand landing strip between two lakes.
Okay.
So when you came in on it, like the one guy almost passed out, and I did too. It was scary.
Oh yeah.
Like, yeah, it stopped. We stopped like 4 feet from the water.
Oof.
And
why are you landing out on this strip though?
to go in and have lunch at the inn, you know.
Okay.
And I needed a cocktail.
Especially after that fucking landing.
I would have jumped out of the plane. And anyway, they ended up buying the property, but we had to stay at the inn overnight,
Right.
because everybody over imbibed. And people were on the phone canceling their meetings. There were no cell phones back then.
All right.
So
That's funny. So where did real estate take you? Because I know your real estate adventures actually got pretty interesting, right?
oh yeah. No, I developed a sort of a reputation as being a white elephant doctor.
What does that mean?
I would take on big projects, like 350,000 square foot projects that somebody else screwed up, and fix them.
Okay.
You know, throw bad tenants out, put good ones in, re-merchandise it, repurpose, mixed-use complex.
But this is mostly retail stuff?
Retail, commercial, office. Mm-hmm. Like in one building we had de Havilland Aircraft, their Design 8 department.
Wow.
Design department was in there. And they had, I don't know, 50,000 square feet. And it was just endless rows of draft tables.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And of course, we had a great steakhouse in the complex, and so it became Steele's West Market.
Oh, okay.
So we converted. It was a badly designed building, like the little guy who ran it was Sully Saltzman,
Okay.
and I probably am the guy that lasted the longest. Like I'd tell him to go to hell and walk out. He'd call me, "Nah, I'm not coming back. You're a miserable little bastard, and I'm tired of your bullshit." And, well, how much more?
I like that the thought of not being a miserable old bastard with a bunch of bullshit never crossed his mind. It's like, yep, how much is it going to cost me?
Well, he liked it because everybody else kissed his ass.
Oh, really?
And I said it. I'd say it in meetings.
Right.
I said all these guys would tell you if you went and jumped off the CN Tower, and you said you like that idea, they go, "Yes, Mr. Saltzman." I said, these guys are a bunch of yes guys, ass kissers, and they're all sitting there looking at me like, "What do you guys resent it?" You know. And anyway, and that led, the income from that allowed me to do other things, like the music.
Right.
So that's how I got hooked up with Long John Baldry. And I ended up managing him for 4 years.
Where does that connection come in, though?
I went to see him at a gig in Toronto. And I met the people that were managing him at that time. And we hit it off. And, I sat there and just said, wow, I've got all kinds of ideas what could be done with him.
Right.
I'd seen him at Ford Auditorium opening for Fleetwood Mac before they let the women in the band and ruin it. Peter Green was playing with them back then.
Okay.
Anyway, so I met the managers, and a week later I flew out to Vancouver and met with him and became a partner in his management. And of course we went and got him a record deal at Capitol Records.
But did you already have connections in the record industry?
No.
You just sort of like saw a band and went like, fuck it, I'm going to be a manager now?
Yeah.
I mean, all right then.
Well, even when I was doing the real estate projects and you're looking to fill a building, I would always start at the top, like the best covenant. Like if I wanted a steakhouse,
right,
I'd call the Keg.
Right.
And then, I don't want to knock any of the others.
Right, but you go down the list.
Yeah, to the point where you go, Giuseppe's House of Ravioli.
Right.
And, not a very good covenant, but they'd fill 3,000 square feet.
Right.
So I love the music business.
Yeah.
It was glamorous and exciting and at the beginning, but then it loses its sizzle
Right.
real quick. Mm-hmm. Like hotel rooms become generic. Like whether it's a suite or whatever, it's a hotel room.
Right.
And at one point, sometimes I do Toronto, LA, 3 times a week.
Right.
And back then, flying was a lot easier. You didn't have the 911
Right.
nonsense you have to, well, it's not nonsense. I mean, everything changed that day. But John was an incredible guy to work with.
What was your initial introduction to him?
Well, his managers, we had a meeting in Toronto, and they said, we met this gentleman last night, and I went backstage, but I don't ever talk business back there. I went, hi, how you doing? And I mentioned that I'd been at the show when he opened for Fleetwood Mac. And they just said, he's got a lot of ideas. And I think they thought I had a lot more money than I did.
Right.
And that's why I had to fly to Vancouver to meet with him. They were checking to see.
Make sure you could make it there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And John and I hit it off. And I basically laid out, it's just like selling a property.
Right.
Here's what I think needs to happen. We need to get him a record deal. We need to get tour support and go into bigger venues and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And it was 4.5 years. It was great. He was a wonderful man. You know, he was funny. He was really gifted. He was lazy in the area of writing.
Okay.
Never wrote a song.
Yeah.
So
So do you play other people's stuff?
yeah.
Okay.
Every time we went into the studio, we had to pick the songs.
And you would just kind of hand it to him and he'd play it out?
Well, if he liked it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, I mean,
He wasn't a robot. He actually got some sort of choice?
yeah, and he had his way with it.
Okay.
I mean, you could take a song that you've heard 20 times, and I mean, that version of what we got the gold record for, or I got the gold record for. Well, we all did, management, John, of course, and platinum. And that was a version of You've Lost That Lovin' Feeling.
Okay.
And with him and Kathy McDonald, who was about 4'8".
Jeez.
But I've seen her walk into a 300-seat room and cut the room without a mic.
Wow. Holy crow.
And of course, she passed away. God rest her soul, as did John. But I also had a 3-piece heavy metal band, well, hard rock band from Toronto called Gatto. And if John was on the show, I'm sure he talked a lot about that.
Absolutely.
So anyway, I did that. I did the management thing for about 5 years. And then I decided I like real estate. It doesn't overdose on drugs. It doesn't, it doesn't require police intervention. Like, it just sits there and gathers wealth.
Right.
So, and I had a family, and being on the road that much was a strain on my marriage and
Yeah.
on my relationship with my little boy, who's now 42. And it was an adventure. And then after I got out of the management is when I started playing the saxophone.
Right. I'm laughing because you're like, because let me just, for perspective, how old are you when you start learning how to play the saxophone?
11.
11.
Yeah.
Oh, you turned it back in the corner. How old were you when you really picked up the saxophone?
About 19.
Okay, so wait a second. Did I miss something in the turn of the story here? I thought the saxophone came after the real estate. Or after managing bands.
Well, no, I had the saxophone.
Okay.
I learned how to play saxophone in the Amherstburg Community Band.
Okay.
And basically, we were poor. So you would go and you would have to pay for your lessons, but they would give you an instrument.
Right.
So they didn't have any saxophones available. So I got the tuba. With
Slight difference. Okay.
yeah, which I hadn't really started to grow yet, so it was an upright tuba. So I used to have to sit on 2 or 3 phone books to reach the mouthpiece. And of course, marching with it was
Forget
out
about
of the
it.
question. But then I shot up, and my dad made me a deal. You raise half the money, and I did that through picking beans out River Canard and
Right.
tomatoes and
I worked those same
Landscape.
fields. Yep.
yeah. And so I raised half the money, and I think I was $10 short. And I said to my dad, well, I got the money, Dad. So he said, okay, let me count it. No, you're $10 short. So make the other $10 and come back and see me.
Nice.
And I did that same thing with my son
Yeah.
with a bike. I was doing a building in Montreal, so I'd fly home every weekend. And so the one weekend, gee, Dad, I'm outgrowing my bike. And I said, well, why are you telling me? I'm not a bike store. Well, gee, Dad, come on. I thought, Well, I said, well, here's what you do. Sell the bike you have and pick out the bike you want, and you raise half the money, and I'll match it. So he called me on a Wednesday, and what time you're getting in, Dad? I got the money for my bike. I said, good. I guess we're going bike shopping. So I get in, same thing, and he was $10
No shit.
47 cents late. So I did the same
I mean,
thing.
for interest, right?
Yeah.
It cost a living and shit.
Yeah. So anyway, I made him raise the money. And my wife and my in-laws and outlaws and the whole world thought I was the worst prick in the world for doing that to him. But you know something? He still thanks me
Yeah.
to this day that I taught him that. And he's living in his $3 million house in Toronto.
No, he did all right then.
Yeah, so it's a nice 2-bedroom.
I mean, you said Toronto. I was figuring studio, but whatever.
But
Talk to me about after. I want to, because I know like we try to keep these things in under about 45 minutes.
Okay.
And just like John, your story is so vast. There's a lot of different pieces to it. I kind of want to get people up to date with who you are these days. After you kind of went through real estate and all of that,
Yeah.
where did that put you?
well, let's go to Friday the 13th of November 2015.
Okay.
I'm leaving my buddy's house after we had a meal, and we didn't binge drink like we normally did, so I was sober. I
Fuck you every time.
fell down 5 stairs and fractured my neck.
Yeah.
And ended up a complete quadriplegic.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't move anything.
Right.
So I began the whole journey that put me in this wheelchair, and I was in the hospital for a year and a half.
Right. Do you want to give a bit of a description for your fall? You ended up like wedged into a doorway or
Yeah.
something, right?
Yeah, and I knew I'd broken my neck.
Right away.
Yeah. So I said, don't move me. And then I kind of passed out.
Yeah.
So anyway, I woke up and I was in the hospital, and they said, we want to operate on your neck tonight. And I said, no, you're not. I want to think about this.
Right.
And I wanted a little more information. So my son came down from Toronto, and, we talked about it, and I said, okay, I'm going to do it. And so I ended up having 2 operations. First one was 9 hours. And they put Humpty Dumpty back together again. People always say it's a good egg. And so anyway, then I had a second operation for a blood clot that formed.
Right.
And during which my heart stopped for 14 seconds.
Oof.
Code blue. My poor cousin Patty's sitting outside. Anyway, it started up by itself. I think God found out I was headed that way, and he went, no way. Keep that Irish bastard down there. I know I made him, but I don't know what happened. And anyway, so off I go to, I was in intensive care for a month. I don't remember a whole lot about that because I was flying high.
Yeah.
And I went into Hotel Dieu for about 5 days and ended up going to Parkwood in London, which is world renowned for spinal injuries. I was there for 6 months. Then back to Hotel Dieu, where I was for a little over a year.
In the so how much time did you spend total in the hospital?
Year and a half.
What was that experience like?
Well, I never was angry about the fall.
Okay.
I never said, why me or poor me. I went, well, okay, I'm a quadriplegic. And I started getting hungry for knowledge.
Okay.
What does this mean? What can I do? I started, I couldn't access the internet because I couldn't move.
Right.
Anything. So now I can, a little bit. And I work hard at therapy.
Right.
I just took every day as it came. And, the therapy was the answer. So I'm always early for therapy and try to do a little better today than I did yesterday.
Right.
And
because I will say, and I don't mean to interrupt, but the couple of conversations I had with John Powers and I don't know, some other people, I've knowing that you were coming in, I've talked to a couple of people about you, and the response that I get back over and over again is the idea that through your situation they never heard one complaint, most of the time, and it was my experience with you too, you take the time to sort of all right, yeah, this is a stupid thing that's going on. Let's move on now. It's really it's I don't inspirational is the wrong sort of word, but it kind of is. It's where do you have any sort of idea where that comes from?
No.
That's fucking brilliant. That's the end of the goddamn interview.
It's funny because I put up some videos on Facebook once in a while.
Right.
And sort of making fun of my situation.
Right.
And people that respond, and a lot of them say, you inspire me. And I go, good, I guess. I mean, I could be inspiring for goodness or for evil. I'm not sure. But it's nice to hear. But it's not, I don't make an effort to do it. It's just the way things happen.
I know, but man, I can't say what I would do in your situation because I don't think anybody could really say that. But like, I think most people would think at least for a little while, even if they were really good people. I think everybody in this room, I would assume, in given your situation, would have a day or two of like, fuck you. Like,
there are days where I'll watch a music video and say, geez, I'd love to jam along with that.
right.
And I miss it. But instead of turning that into self-pity, I turn it into motivation.
Right.
So when I go into the therapy room the next day, I try to do a few more reps, or I'll ask for more resistance, or I'll try and pedal a little farther on the bike. Mm-hmm. And, the buck stops here.
Right.
All the doctors and nurses and everybody in the world could only be good at what they do based on how good a patient I am. Most of the therapists that I've had love me because I want to get better. I want to get out of this wheelchair.
Right.
I don't want to go, I'm too tired to go to therapy. Okay, no, 5 is enough.
Right.
I want more, and I can't wait to go to therapy.
Yeah.
I love it.
Well, but you do more because you, in addition to fighting your own fucking battle, which is, I mean, more than I think I could probably deal with. You're also sort of like how you and I first kind of got working together. You're doing some incredible stuff for the people that you're coming in contact with because of this journey too.
Yeah, well, yeah.
So, I mean, I don't want to tell the story. You tell them.
Well, the first day I toured Benwell Gardens, where I am now.
Benwell Gardens, for those who might not know, is a
long-term care facility or nursing home. I don't know why they call it a nursing home. They have sippy cups, they have diapers, they have childish behavior, but no breastfeeding. Yeah. So, where's the nursing? Mind you, in a lot of cases, I'm glad. I'm glad there's no actual nursing. But it's a really close look at, people who don't have any family, people that are suffering from dementia and do have family, but they're all vaults of wisdom. They all have quiet moments, and they're all human beings. So I don't let the workers bark at people. If I hear it, I go, hey, you can't talk to them like that, because there's a thing called the Residents' Bill of Rights, which I have memorized several relevant clauses for. I'm actually doing a presentation on it to the graduating RPN and nurses class at St. Clair College, allegedly. But of course, the ball's in their court to work that out with me, and so far they haven't. So I'm not looking for trouble. But no, it's been an education, and I try to make them all smile.
Yeah.
I mean, the back to the story at hand.
Right.
I do my tour of Benwell Gardens. I meet the administrator, and I said, "You have free Wi-Fi in here?" No, and I went, "Why not?" Well, there's no interest. And I went, "What?" Well, what if I wanted to get it put in here? So, well, you'd have to go to a resident council meeting and get a vote. So I went to a resident council meeting, and like the president's 90 years old, and she sits there and goes, "That's nice, dear." She's a sweet old lady. And, And all the other people sitting there, one guy's asleep, you know. Anyway, the subject of books came up because the library, I mean, that facility is 47 years old, and a lot of the books they had when they opened up are still there. And I've actually now got people donating books all the time. But I listened to them, and then I got up and did my presentation, and I said, you people have talked about books a lot during this meeting. How do you like to have a library at your fingertips? How would you like every word puzzle, crossword puzzle, an infinity of at your fingertips? Do you have a loved one on the other side of the country or the other side of the earth? How do you like to talk to them face to face, anytime you want, for free? And of course, got a unanimous vote. And then a buddy of mine, John O'Kane, who owns two John Mack's restaurants here in Windsor, came to have lunch with me one day, and I was talking about the Wi-Fi thing. He said, give me the green light, we'll pay for it. Oh. So now I go into the administrator, I got unanimous approval, and now I got a sponsor that'll pay for it. Well, you know, it's not going to happen overnight. It's a complicated, lengthy process. And I said, well, what I'd like to do is have him call you and arrange to have his technical people come in and assess the facility to get an idea of what's involved. Well, yeah, have him call me. So John called me on a Sunday to tell me he'd had a conversation with her, and of course it was, well, it's complicated, and it's a horribly long process. And anyway, turned him right off. So he called laughing, said, she was very nice, very professional, but she said, this is going to take forever. Like these discussions were going on in October. She said, maybe we could have an answer in February or March. Of course, when John called me and told me that she more or less turned him off,
Right.
I got pissed off. So I called the president of the company in Toronto and left him a voicemail on a Sunday. Monday morning, he called me at 9 o'clock. 2 weeks later, we had Wi-Fi. And then, of course, we made the 6 o'clock news on CTV.
Yep.
We got a little article in the Windsor Star. That story also ran in London. So we now have 11 nursing homes that have put in free Wi-Fi for the residents and their families. And this week, the video that you kindly helped us do, 2 of them, are going to be played at the Ontario Association of Long-Term Care conference in Toronto. And there's roughly 2,000 delegates there representing every nursing home and long-term care facility in Ontario.
It's incredible, man.
So, and when I finish with Wi-Fi, I'm going to go after the cable companies.
There we go.
Well, actually, if they have Wi-Fi, they don't even need
They
it.
don't even need it.
So,
Kim, I hate to wrap this up. Again, it was the same thing with John. We could just go here. You're going to come back a couple of times. You don't have a choice. Maybe next time we'll get you to sit on the couch.
yeah, I could make that happen. Now that I've seen the facility,
Right.
just arranging a few logistics.
1 or 2. We'll definitely have you back, though.
That'd be the first couch I've sat on in 3 years.
We'll make it. We got to make it happen now. We got to make it happen. Thanks for coming out, man.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thank you.